and welcome back to the Dreamcast. I am your host, Denise Walsh. I combine science, scripture, and stories that will inspire you to dive deep, break through your own personal glass ceiling, and design a life of your dreams. I believe that we can thrive in all areas of life at the same time. But where do we begin? Personally, financially, spiritually, relationally? And often because we don't know where to focus, we do nothing. At least that's the space I lived in for several years. I know what it feels like to constantly be spinning my wheels. And that's exactly why I created the Dream Life Daily Journal. After working through the Dream Life Action Planner, we need to do something every day so we actually take steps in the direction we desire. Throughout the years, I've developed success habits that have helped me to create a Dream 10 life in all areas by focusing on one area at a time. And I teach you exactly what to do each and every day in the Dream Life Daily Journal. You'll find a gratitude game every day to start the morning off right, a space for prayer, meditation, journaling, a space to write down your clear and intentional dream life goal with affirmations and visualizations connected to that goal. You'll then have a spot to write down your dream life action to-do list so you can be intentionally taking action towards your goal every single day. I know that by completing the Dream Life Daily Journal every day for at least 30 days, you can create momentum. And when you do that, my friends, you can live your dream life too. Check out the dreamlifetoolkit.com or Amazon to get your copy of the Dream Life Daily Journal today. Big welcome back to the Dreamcast. You guys know that I stinking love all of our guests because I think so many of our guests are giving us timely, not just nuggets of wisdom, but things we can do today to really navigate this last year. And who knows what the next couple months will look like, right? So we've all been through what we call a global trauma, essentially. We've had to pivot, a lot of us. And our next guest is the queen of not just surviving a pivot, but actually thriving through them. She is the founder of a curated content platform called Spark, and she has built her career by embracing disruption and identifying innovative concepts and technologies that challenge companies and people to think differently. She has survived and thrived through many life-altering social and economic crises over the past 20 years, including 9/11, the 2008 crash, and now the most recent, of course, the global pandemic. Her career spans corporate, entrepreneurial, advisory roles across technology, business services, customer products, real estate. You can see she's done a little bit of everything: finance, marketing, business development. And now she's on a mission to empower others to trust their instincts, take risks, and discover their path to personal and professional happiness. Ooh, mic drop. All right, big Dreamcast. Welcome to Kellee Marlow.
Thank you, Denise. You did that so beautifully. Better than I can, for sure.
Well, I really think this is such a timely conversation because regardless if you went from, kids in school to virtual learning to working at work to working at home to, wherever your situation is, everyone's had to pivot on some level. And so I'm excited to really give people tools to navigate the situation we're in right now. But before we dive into that, I'd love to hear a bit about what got you here. So tell me a bit about Ori and some of the life-altering crisis situations you have thrived through in the past.
I have always been a very curious person. So I started in finance where I was an analyst, and then I wasn't curious anymore. Then I moved on to marketing, and that was interesting, and I wasn't curious anymore. So then I went on to business development, and then I went on to become an entrepreneur. Basically, I just was always asking a lot of questions, and I was just interested how things worked, but I didn't want to become a specialist in a particular field where I would just keep building on that. So my learning curve was always very steep because I was always starting over again. And I was okay with that because it pushed me really hard to just be able to say, okay, what is it that I'm trying to figure out? And where do I want to get to? And really focus on that. But it was just always something that was built inside of me to do. And so over time, what I realized was that now I have a bag of skills that I can take to become an entrepreneur. And now I know how to do marketing. Now I know how to do finance. And not that I recommend it for everyone, because you don't need to do that to become an entrepreneur. But I realized that it actually got to where I needed to be over time.
Well, it's so true. We look back and we go, oh, wow, I'm using all of the skills that I have, it all kind of comes up and is helpful and comes together in the end. It also sounds like you don't like to be bored.
Yes, I'm constantly doing something that I've never done before. So it's just who I am. And so if there's a crisis, I'm like, oh, okay, like, what do I do now? And that's something like I think about as well. And so like in this pandemic, I'm watching how people are responding. And to me, it's so fascinating, right? Because you have people who have the mindset of opportunity. They're seeing opportunity and other people are seeing crisis. So a lot of it comes down to mindset. Like if you're looking for opportunity, you will find opportunity. If you're looking for crisis, you will find crisis. And that's the part where I'm just watching how all the businesses are responding. And I love the entrepreneurs or solopreneurs who really see opportunity during this time.
Tell me a bit about your experience with other world events in the past and how they impacted you.
So I think the first one was 9/11. I was sitting in my office and the plane crashed into the towers. And I think no one knew how to respond because nothing has happened on American soil like that before. And then suddenly, it felt pretty suddenly, the economy came into this screeching halt, right? No one knew that this one event would create such a ripple effect. And then the economy was going sideways and a lot of people were getting laid off and there was restructuring at the time. And so I was restructured down and I didn't like that. I just thought, I don't want to be doing this. Like, I don't want to be like my destiny is in somebody else's control. And it's nothing to do with whether I'm qualified, whether I know what I'm doing, how good I am on my job. It just, it's luck sometimes where you're at the wrong place at the wrong time. And you may get restructured out, downsized. So that's what happened to me. So that crisis pushed me to say, okay, I'm going to become an entrepreneur. Like, I'm not doing this anymore.
Right. We're faced with a change. And oftentimes it's not of our own doing. I mean, that's what makes it a crisis or somewhat traumatic, is because it's an external force that says, you no longer are working here, or you now have to move. We're downsizing and we're giving you a less important, maybe even less money job, right?
Right.
And at some point you go, that's giving somebody else way too much power. And we have to take that power back, don't we?
Exactly. That's how I felt. I just felt like I'm not going to give away my power every time. There's some kind of shift either within the company or outside of me. And I think during that time, there was definitely a rise of solopreneurs.
Yeah.
Right. And so it was like really empowering to see.
So what was your first business? What did you do?
Well, actually, what I did was at first I thought I would start from scratch. Then I decided that I wanted to take over somebody else's business. So there could be a number of people who are looking to retire. And I thought, you know what? I love studying businesses. So let me start off by studying other people's business first. And that's always the recommendation that I make, that you always do your research before you jump into anything. And so I started looking at businesses, how they work and what was working for them, what was not. And somebody wanted to sell his retail business and he had 2 locations. And I thought, okay, I know retail. I worked in retail in high school. That was my first job. So I can do this. But what you realize is that it's not just about what you want to do. Like, you have to be prepared to wear many hats as an entrepreneur. You have to be prepared to do the accounting that you might not want to be doing. You have to be prepared to do the marketing. You have to be prepared to do the service. Like, you have to be prepared to wear all the hats if you're serious about being an entrepreneur.
Are you still doing that?
I'm not. So I sold it before the 2008 crisis. So it kind of slid out in time and moved on to building something else. But at the time, it was just really interesting to me to see what's like to take over a business and grow it and see what I can do and scale it up and see what I can do with it.
Was there anything that you noticed when you took over that you thought, all right, I'm going to make this shift and we're going to see either more sales or more customers? What was one thing that you did during that worked?
When you've been in business over time, you get on autopilot, right? So whatever was working for the business. But I realized it was like there's so much more, and I'm willing to take risks because I'm coming in fresh, with fresh eyes. And so I'm like, oh, we can definitely do more of this category because there's so many parents in the area. Like they're buying their kids nonstop. These spontaneous, little toys here and there when the kids are crying. I'm like, oh, we got to fill the stores up with this. Like, it's a nonstop, instant gratification situation that we're seeing here. So, like, that's one of the examples. And then you can never miss Christmas if you work in retail. So it's about the numbers. Like, you have to get your inventory perfect. And so every time I go to a store now and they say, we're out, like I cringe. I'm like, oh my God, I can't be out. You're missing a sale if you are out. Like, you can never be out of any product. Like, come on, people, watch your products. So yeah, so that's what I really learned from that experience. And also maximizing your real estate space, because it's all about square footage. You have to be selling so much per square foot, or else you should not be owning that space. So some retail spaces are perfect and some are too large for what they're selling, and some are it's kind of in between. So you have to make sure you can't be like, minimalist, right? Kind of have this minimalist look, I only have 10 items in the store. That's not maximizing your square footage. So you have to, unless it's like a $10,000 item or $1 million item that you're selling, and sure, you're maximizing square footage. But that's part of what retail is about, and that's what I got out of the experience is understanding real estate, understanding, how retail works from a business model standpoint.
I love that. You went into a business that was running on autopilot. And you guys, if you're an entrepreneur listening, your business may be on autopilot a little bit. And we need some freshening up, some risk taking, some new ideas to shift some things so we can scale and so that we can grow. What did you end up doing next?
So I sold it right before the crash, so the 2008 crash. And then from there, I started helping other entrepreneurs who wanted to get their business going and doing advisory work for them, because I wanted to think through like what that next business would look like. And interestingly, I kept hitting walls, kind of like, okay, you need to be doing something else. And I had to think about that for a while. So I was like kind of coasting on this advisory service. And what I realized was that I had to be focused on being of service, but I didn't know what that looked like. And yeah, so it was kind of interesting where like nothing was moving because I was focusing on the wrong thing. Whereas like it's always worked for me before, where I was jumping from marketing to business development to being an entrepreneur. And suddenly it was like, boom, that's it. Like, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. So now you got to get focused on what you're supposed to be doing. Somehow this message, like, you need to be of service, came up. And I was just like, well, I don't know what that means. I don't know what that looks like. It can be anything, right? And so it took me a while to figure that out. And now I work with local income entrepreneurs, for example. In San Francisco, I'm working with an organization where we bring women from continents where it's very hard for them to access high-level education. And the goal is to get them here, prepare them, they get through college here, they go back to become leaders and empowerment agents in their countries and to create that ripple effect in their communities. So I'm just focused on basically ways that I can help and support people who are going to go back and become empowerment agents in their own community.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
and then this is just, the podcast and the content aspect of it is just me sharing everything that I'm seeing to everybody who is interested in, staying up to date and staying curious about what's working and what's not.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, you have lots of experience in lots of different arenas, and I love that you're able to be of service and give back that wisdom. I think sometimes it can be easy to be like, well, I'll just retire or travel or have fun. But that's not soul filling. I often think it's a waste to not share all the things that you're learning. And so I love that you've created a space to do that. But then also with low income entrepreneurs in your area and abroad, tell me a bit about how you were able to get that started.
I had volunteered as an advisor before for various organizations. This time to ask me to come back and join the Women's Leadership Council. The goal is to basically be participating at different levels, whether it's at an organizational level or one-to-one with entrepreneurs and being a mentor to them, helping them, I want to say, like really understand what they're selling, right? And why they're selling it. And making sure they understand they can make money. Because a lot of people feel like, I'm not sure I'm worthy of doing this. I'm like, you're totally worthy. You have to, you have to do this. And you can't be giving anything away for free. You got to start making money now. Like, don't feel like because you've never done it, you should be giving it away for free when you first start. So it's just helping people who wouldn't traditionally be going through the corporate ladder or the traditional jobs because it just wouldn't work for them, to realize that they can empower themselves through entrepreneurship.
Entrepreneurship is like the best personal development program with compensation attached. Because I love what you said, that one of the first steps is to build that confidence and really know that, yes, you are worth being paid in this transaction, this energy exchange. Like, yes, you can charge for your service. In fact, your people are missing out if you don't.
Yes.
You feel like that worthiness, that underlying theme of worthiness is something you work with a lot of clients about?
Yes, I think everyone has something to offer, but they don't always see it. And they don't always feel that they're there. Like somehow they have to be somewhere, in terms of being there. And they think they have this picture of what that looks like. And because they're not there, they feel like, they're not really real, right?
Yeah.
Yes, they're not real yet. I'm like, you're real. The fact that you're even here and thinking about it, you're real. And so, so I just help them get very clear as to what they're providing, why they're providing it, and that they need to charge for it and what that looks like for them, and that they have to focus on making money now, like day one. And also, the gaps, they're like, sometimes not sure, and they don't know how long it's going to take them. I'm like, you need to be sure who you're selling this to. And, you have to be sure that you can do it from day one. You can't maybe 6 months from now, because then it's probably not going to happen. So just really clarifying what the gaps look like and how they need to bridge those gaps.
I love it. I love it. One of the things in your intro, it says that your mission is to empower others to trust their instincts, take risks, and discover their path. Tell me a bit about trusting their instincts. What does that mean? And do you have a time in your life where you trusted your instinct and it was right?
I definitely trusted much more now than before, because I think I was more in my head, especially being at a desk, right? You're always like, oh, the paperwork says this, the paperwork says that. So that's what you're trusting, like what's in front of you, which is like more what's in your head, what you're reading, what you're seeing. So it becomes like everybody else's judgment becomes more important when you're in that kind of environment. Whereas now I'm working for myself, I have to be much more instinctual as to what's working and not. And I think from that place, that's the only way you're going to thrive as an entrepreneur, is that you trust that it's going to work, and you trust that that it's going to work, and that you're not like questioning it, and and kind of you take feedback, but you have to be able to tell the difference between feedback and judgment, right? So, and you kind of how you have to trust your instinct as to like what you're going to do with that feedback, and what are you going to do with that judgment. So if it's judgment call, then you say, okay, is there any validity to it? Is there something I'm supposed to take away from it? Or, this is just not going to apply to me, and I need to focus on feedback that's going to apply to me.
Well, I think this is such a huge skill. Trusting your instinct means listening, to yourself, to your gut, staying connected to yourself. I mean, I teach the Dream Life Pathway, which is head, heart, feet. And so head is clarity and what do you want, mindset and all of that. And heart is really that instinct, that emotional connection to what you're doing, being excited about it. Sometimes freeing yourself from the tethers of other people and, the external pulls that we can have. So it sounds like first it's listening and really learning to hone in so you can hear your gut feelings or your responses, but then trusting on it and taking those risks, like you said next, that no boss is telling you what to do and saying, this is the roadmap, go do it. As an entrepreneur, we have to kind of feel into some of that and then take the step boldly, even if it's new to us.
Yes, I definitely spend a lot more time feeling into it now than, when I was more in my head thinking through it in a, highly structured job, right? Because that's what they were paying me for. But now it's like I have to feel what's right for me, and does this speak to me? And that's a completely different skill. And it's not like I just got there overnight. I mean, it took time for me to like switch over to that mindset of saying, does this feel right? What is it that I really want to, bring out to the world, and feeling through that and getting comfortable with that.
Do you have an idea or exercise or something that you could refer people to help them learn how to listen into their heart a bit more?
That's a really good question, because I'm definitely not one of those people that I want to say practice. Like, there are people who practice this, for them it's a way of life. And I think for me, it's been different. It's been kind of like baby step each day, where it's like, it was funny because yesterday I was just like, there's this exercise that you're supposed to do when you lock your fingers, and it feels tight, then it's supposed to feel right. And if it's loose, it doesn't feel right. Have you heard of that before?
Yeah.
That never works for me, because I'm always like, okay, am I locking? Am I unlocking? Like, what exactly am I doing? Yeah. So I'm just like, okay, just don't even think, just like make that, that quick decision. What would that super quick decision be? And just go with it. And I always end up having to do it that way. And then just don't look back.
Yeah. Well, it's true. I often say, what's the first thing you think of? Go.
Yeah.
And because then if the first thing that you think of is typically what you really want or what would be best for you. And then we get in our head and we shoulda, coulda, woulda, we self-sabotage, we second guess, and all the things, we get wishy-washy. So going with that first instinct, that first declaration, of course you can pivot, but at least you're taking action.
Yes.
Now, you've also said that one of the things that really impacted your shifts when you felt like things weren't quite working is this need to be of service. And I'm guessing that has a connection with the core value that you have. So tell me a little bit about how it's important to work a business that's in alignment with your core values.
So I want to use the current pandemic as an example, because what I'm seeing is their business who are not focusing from the mindset. They're focusing more on what can you do for me, especially during this time, because I'm not doing well. So it's like, are you going to be giving me extra tips? Like, what are you going to do for me? And I feel that if you focus the opposite, where you focus on being of service, that people are more likely to trust you, to want you to be part of their community, of that interaction. And that is so important, especially right now. And that's the part where I think if you have that core value in your business, you're more likely to grow, because they're going to feel comfortable coming to you, reaching out to you. And that's the part where I feel like I'm seeing less of. And it's what's going to make the biggest difference right now, is having that mindset.
And it's intentional, isn't it? Because there may be some fear happening, paychecks are down or service is down, and we've all had to do things virtually, or if whatever it is, we're all pivoting. And so even in the midst of feeling some of that fear, you can still choose to have a more positive, service-focused mindset. Is that right?
Yes. So if you have that mindset going into each day, it's almost like a mindset of gratitude, right? You're like, I'm thankful that you're here. What can I do for you? It makes a huge difference in how fast you're going to see that growth of support around you, because people are feeling it from you. And in return, they want to give back the same feeling that they're receiving. And I think also it changes the way you're responding to opportunity. So instead of saying, how can I make more money? You're saying, how can I be of more service? And by doing that, your customers are more likely to come to you and say, well, I want to do XYZ for me.
And when you come with the attitude of how can I be of service? How can I help you? That seems more of like a brainstorming, creative type energy versus the help me, I'm in fear. And so you really can say, all right, well, let's get creative. How can right now, when things look a little bit different, can I serve you and still offer great service or still offer you this product in just maybe a new way? I wonder if there's people who may keep some of the changes that they've made over the past few months because it worked for them.
Yeah, but that's a really good point. I mean, there are two ways to look at this. One is being creative. So let's say you're a restaurant. You can say, hey, I'm offering 5 meals for the price of 6. And hopefully by the 6th meal, you'll have income coming from elsewhere, right? But your customers are like, wow, how am I going to refuse that deal? I can get 6 out of 5. So there's that creative aspect of it. The other aspect is just reaching out and say, hey, how you doing? I hope you're okay, your family's okay, and just having that rapport, that connection, that makes a huge difference these days. Because I think a lot of people with this COVID, kind of like mask on and kind of like stay away, 6 feet away from me, like the interaction isn't there the way it used to be. And I think it's just as important, if not even more so, I have to say, even if you have to do it online, you can easily reach out like through social media or email, whatever it is that you can do, like people will appreciate it.
Yeah. It's true. No matter what your business is, saying, how are you to your customers is powerful because most of the time it's a transactional conversation or even just getting to the heart of like, how are you doing? Thinking about you. I hope you're doing great, brings that level of loyalty because it really is adding more community into the service versus just a transaction.
Yeah, it feels good to be there. So you'll want to be
there. Yeah. Ooh, that's good. And you also have a documentary called The Art of Courage, which was featured in 11 film festivals and available on Amazon Prime. Tell us a bit about what The Art of Courage is all about.
Okay, so I never planned to make a documentary film. It just called out to me, like, make me, or else you're going to miss this opportunity to make me. I was like, okay. So what happened was I was interviewing a activist artist, and she said, look, I'm going to the Paris Climate Summit. If I make it there, will you join me and produce my event, the footage of my art piece? And I said, sure. If you make it there, I'd be happy to come to Paris. So then I booked my ticket, and then that night the terrorist attacks took place. And I'm watching horror. I'm like, wow, it's the first time anything's happened like that in a first world country, in Paris of all places. And no one knew how to respond. And there's something that was calling me like, you need to go, you need to see this. And so that was another example of instinct. It was just like, even though there's a terrorist attack, you have kids you're going to be leaving at home to walk into the middle of this. You have to go. So then I go, and there's soldiers everywhere. Everything's shut down. But then you have all these climate activists there and politicians and some celebrities who are brave enough to show up. And I'm like, wow, there's a lot going on here right now. And we didn't know what was going to happen because no events could take place, no gatherings. And it was a miracle because they got permit to do this installation, which required over 100. Initially, they needed 1,000 people to do this. So they didn't know who was going to show up. And the police department and the mayor said, you can do this, but they gave the permission the day before the event. So everyone was scrambling, and I'm just like, wow, let's make this happen. Let's see what happens. The image takes place that's made of people. And the image represents the message that's going to go out during the climate summit. And you have people from all over the world that come and gather for this message. It becomes the iconic image for the climate summit in New York Times, in all international newspapers. Did we know this was going to happen? No. And I felt like what it was basically saying to me is you have to show up even if you don't know what's going to happen. Like you can have it perfectly planned. You can be perfectly clear. Sometimes you just have to show up, and you may be surprised, but life will show you. And so that was like the message I felt like I got from the event, as well as the power of community, the fact that everyone was there and they were in support of each other despite everything that was going on in Paris. And how much people really care about the planet. That's what was so beautiful. Like, they came from the Amazon, from Africa, and they really care so much about the planet that they wanted to make a difference. And so, yeah, so.
That's where the documentary was born.
I said, and then I came back and I just finished. I was just like, oh my gosh, it's like, give birth to the story, give birth. I was just like, oh my God, I have to give birth now, even though I've never made a documentary film before. So I figured out how to do it backwards. And so then I work with the various people, and now this is another part of being an entrepreneur is you got to figure it out. So I'm like, I'll just figure it out. So I figured out how to make it. And luckily with technology being so advanced, I was able to do it. And then I just submitted the film to different film festivals. And it was just really exciting when the story resonated with, all the different festivals.
Awesome. And it is still available on Amazon Prime?
Yes, it's still available on Amazon Prime.
How cool. So yes, The Art of Courage, my friends. Check it out on Amazon Prime. And the story of how it was birthed and why it was created, and the fact that Kellee did not have it all figured out. She just had that spark of intuition, that idea, and she said yes. And the more that you actually say yes and start walking out your dreams, the more confident you'll become that you can figure it out. Like, I can figure it out. If I figured this out, I can figure that out. And it may not be smooth sailing. You may have ups and downs along the way. You may have learned things the hard way, but it will get done because you now have built that muscle that says, I can do it. I can do hard things. And the more you build that muscle, the less you'll second guess yourself, the less you'll, wonder or be wishy-washy, and you'll be able to have that first instinctual decision and then trust it and go for it boldly. So Kellee, your website is, it is spark-conversations.com. You guys check out her website and check out Art of Courage on Amazon Prime and just support her work and get to know what she's doing now. Is there anything that you would like to say to somebody who has that spark but is a bit timid to step into it?
Say, you'll never know unless you step into it. So step into it. And every mistake is a lesson. And you're just going to get stronger with every mistake.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and your wisdom with us. You have worn many hats throughout the years, and I've loved that you've created a space to share that wisdom with those who truly do need it the most. The ripple effect of that is powerful. So thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, Denise.
Thanks so much for hanging out with us today. I want to hear your aha moment from today's amazing episode. If you could leave a review at whatever podcast player you choose to listen from, Apple Podcast, Castbox, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're listening from, leave a review and share with us your favorite part of today's episode. Thanks for hanging out, and remember to dream big.